Okay. So, first of all, just to introduce you to Lok. So, Lok Chitrakar. And so now you see the name, we have the same surname. And so the same surname basically would mean that there are 64 guilds in the Kathmandu Valley. And so by our surname, you can tell we are from the painting guild. So the painting guild are the families that basically maintain the cultural sites through painting. So if you see the chariot festival, then the eyes on the wheels will be painted by the Chitrakars. If you see a mask dance, the mask will be made by the Chitrakars. So this is the traditional occupation. Now, the difference is, Lok continued the family tradition on a full time. Whereas me, I do a little bit of ritual art, but I trained as an engineer, energy planning. But 2 generations later, I think he's doing better than me. So this is just something families always like to compare. So what Lok tries to do as a master artist is create a new generation. Now part of that is through internships, but also part of that is to teach at the university, where in the Kathmandu University we have actually a bachelor's program now in art and craft, and half of the students come from traditional families with no academic background. The other half come from academic background with no practical knowledge. And so trying to create this hybrid in the class. So I thought this is perfect. And so just turn around. Okay, so look at all those pieces, and then let's have Lok describe it just a little bit about what those are. Yeah, turn around.
Describing our situation is compassion. It's all cultural, so person culture. I'm a few days like it's Chitrakar. But usually do compassion. Maybe not look where to pay the thing, let's say chow. There were Twitter thing, yeah, I'm
So, basically what he's saying is that compassion is an attribute that all of us have. And we'd like to show compassion to other beings. And so what he's saying is the artist, basically, in the text, in the philosophical text, there are 108 ways in our culture that you show compassion to other beings. Right? And so you read those, the description of those attributes. Remember, it's an attribute. And then what the artist does is turn them into these images so that it's easier for the layperson to understand what those attributes are. Just it's so udara. So he's saying, if you look at the first one there, yeah. So in the first one, and we'll see this as we walk, I'll show you many. Look at the hand, the right hand, so with the palm open.
Yeah.
And the other one is holding, basically the lotus flower. So the lotus I'll describe later, but it's a symbol of purity, the giving in terms of the purity of the heart. But then the hand position, which is the open palm, is the first chapter in the Buddhist text, which is the perfection of giving. So that ability to give is what we need to perfect. So for example, if I'm teaching, then I have to give it in a way that it is pure, not held back. And so the symbol of the open palm is the perfection of giving. But it's complicated to do it. So if you look at this one that is just describing, so you can see it's multiple heads and multiple hands, this third from the right. And so basically, he's saying that, as you try to help and show compassion to other beings, you also reach a state of helplessness. That how many can I do? And so what he's saying is the artist is depicting. You see the multiple heads, where the head is multiplying, but then the hands now have been multiplied by 1,000 times. And so that's how much we have to try to save, but there's a limit to what we can do. And so that capturing, and so the tears, out of compassion, then creates these two taras, to help him to complete that work. So it's all, iconography, but capturing the fact that we can help everybody, but maybe we cannot do it alone, so we need to multiply. And so the multiplication of our good karma is what he is trying to capture. So let's go inside. Perfect impression of what he was describing. And so the city that we're going to walk through, so you just remember, you look at this hand reaching out into the tree. So the tree would be a symbol of your enterprise. Right? So you're picking up stuff from the enterprise, and the other hand is in the giving. So giving and having. So every Nepali, especially as you walk through Patan, you will notice that having an enterprise is very basic to life, because you have to create wealth, and wealth creation is part of that. But then the wealth creation for the simple purpose of giving. So in the iconography, as we walk, I'll show you the difference. So look at, the Buddha would have long ears, but it would be empty. But if you see long ears with an exaggerated jewelry, then what Lok is was describing is that you reach a stage in your life when you know that you can use the teachings of the Buddha to become a Buddha yourself. But you forfeit becoming a Buddha, so you go back to bring everybody along. So the closest definition of the word compassion in the West would be to stop your own journey, to go back, to help everybody go along. And so it is a celebration of people who made that choice to stop their own journey, to go back. So the Bodhisattva, and so the male is Bodhisattva, the female would be Tara. Right? So it's very simple depiction. And so if you look at the iconography, so you can see the whole tree is your enterprise. And so from the enterprise you're picking things up and giving it to those who need. Right? So look at this. So Lok may not tell you this, but I'll tell you. So this is a tantric or a Ganesh, that is worship, for removing obstacles. So when you start a large project, when you do a major work, you always start with the worship of the Ganesha. And so you can look at all the tools that you would need, which are then attributes that help you to remove your obstacles. Now, when the Australian Parliament delegation came here, so the Speaker and 8 parliamentarians were here, and I told them something very simple. So the first thing is that living artists need money, dead artists don't need money. So please stop buying art from dead artists. Buy from living artists. So you know what they did? They went back to Australia, sent all the stolen art back to Nepal, and they replaced it with this as a token of their walk, their heritage walk. So this is really setting a good trend. And so the Rubin Museum in New York also shut down on October 6th, and they are returning all the stuff back to Nepal. So if you go to the National Museum, boxes and boxes of art is now starting to come back and being replaced by art by living artists. Okay. So Lok is a real leader, and so he has a lot of interns who work with him. So now we need to go to the minerals. Is what he's working on, and so this is the Buddha. Now look at this hand position. So the hand position with the palm out would be Dana Mudra or Varada Mudra, so which means the perfection of giving, right? And so what he's going to do is just show you the pigments and the minerals that he uses to produce this. But in that, look at this female in green. So remember 644 AD. So that's the woman who married the Tibetan king to establish the trade route in Tibet. So the artist is the one who helps us to come up with images that will help us to understand. So for example, why would you use so much geometry and color in a painting? So how many of you have seen the movie Beautiful Mind? Russell Crowe's Beautiful Mind. So what does Jennifer Connelly tell Russell Crowe? He says, God must be a Chitrakar, otherwise why would there be so many colors? So the whole idea of using colors in nature is that it attracts bees. So the white flower doesn't have any color. So what does the white flower have? It has fragrance. So look at equity in nature. right? So the color is to attract you. The geometric forms are to attract you. But once you get attracted to it, then we can talk about philosophy. But the first thing is to attract you. So you say, who is this person? And then we can talk all about Tibetan history. So the image has a very specific purpose, and the Chitrakars have a very specific role in society to draw things, draw people to this idea. Right? So it's called Kina. So you can see it's so good. So I just wanted to feel it. So this is Cinnabar. It's for the red. So just take it and then pass it. Yeah. So this is Orbimet. So you look at it.
Like gold.
Yeah,
This is
Orbimet.
with the people. What color?
Yellow.
Yellow and like
What's that? This is so lapis.
lapis.
And so it doesn't use any chemicals, so minerals. Yeah, we'll show you. So the first is the source, and then it's got to be ground. So this is lime. Lime for the white. Here too.
What's the
Orbimet. And then this is lime. So you'll see, that they grind it.
Oh, this one is so
And then
light.
they boil it in bone and
Yeah.
skin.
Smelling the ropes and windows, I don't know how to
Because in the nature, it would come from ant hills. Yeah? So this is silver and. So now in the process, we'll go to the next painting we have tested.
It works as a glue. They just boil it
Same.
in hot water and
Yeah,
it
so
works
we'll
as a
see.
glue.
Yeah, but it's not paper, it's
And they just
cloth.
put it in a cotton. It's not a paper, it's a cotton canvas.
It will dry back out and then you add water and again.
Water and the
यो सुक्यो भने पानी हालेर
बाइन्डर पनि हाल्छ
उमाल्नु पर्छ तातोमा।
So this is cinnamon.
सिनामा
I want you to look behind you, and you see the gate or the entrance, to the main city. Now, the earthquake, damages a lot of physical structures. Okay, so the 4 images that you see on the door, and there are 4 on the other side, so total of 8. So what you need to understand is that when these historical cities were built, they were not built with just a plan, but also with faith. And so, can you imagine, 3,000 years ago, let us say, people would have sat together and said, what can go wrong in the city that we built? So it could have famine, it could have drought, it could have disease, right? A lot of things can go wrong. So what they would do was make a list, and so the city came up with 8 things that can go wrong, and they have 8 mother goddesses for everything that can go wrong, right? So the 8 mother goddesses. So in Patan, the key worship or faith would be of the 8 mother goddesses that protect the city. Now, if you look at the one on the left at the bottom, so it is called Indrayani. Okay, Indrayani, don't remember this, Indrayani. And so it has started to rain. The fact that it has started to rain means the gods or the good is winning over the bad. Because the bad would basically dam the water, the good would allow the water to flow. So the fact that the water is flowing would be an Indrayani or the motherly attribute that allows the water to flow. Now look at those images. When we walk in, I'm going to show you how it's connected to the space in the city. Right? Now in the same way, I want you to look to the right. So in 2015 when we had the earthquake, so just imagine 33 classrooms, 33,000 classrooms were damaged during this earthquake. And yet not a single child died because it was on a Saturday. Imagine the next one, earthquake hitting 33,000 classrooms when it's a full class day. So now what is the lesson we learned from the earthquake? That we need to make classrooms resilient. So who would have the best technology to make classrooms resilient? The Japanese government, right? And so read that text and see how geology works, because Kathmandu Valley is a very special geological setting. The Japanese have the technology. And then just look beyond the gate and see the new classroom that is now built with resilience. as part of the design. Right? So basically, yeah. Do you understand how, again, as geologists, how much work you would have in Nepal? Just to make the 33,000 classroom safe by design. And so I want you to look at that classroom, look at the school and see what that means. You see that image, so and you're watching the news, so what would that image mean to you right now? That image.
Israel.
Israel. So how old is the state of Israel?
Not all.
70 years old.
Yeah.
How old do you think Patan is? About 3,000 years old.
Wow.
So how does a country that is about 80 years old have a flag based on a 3,000-year-old symbol? So this is what we're going to learn, is that Nepal lies on the ancient Silk Road, along the trade route.
Oh.
And so things have been moving up and down all the time. But if you ask anybody, you say that's the flag of Israel, versus if you ask a Nepali what does it mean. So the two things I want you to keep in mind throughout your time in Nepal is that the skills are the triangle that faces up, knowledge is the triangle that faces down. So to acquire wisdom, you need to combine knowledge and skills. And so the Buddhist text that you will see inside is called the Pragya Paramita, or the perfection of wisdom. So if you are just knowledgeable, it's half of the answer. If you are just skillful, that's also half. Skill and knowledge both have to come together to form the whole. Okay. Now, look at this Shaivik symbol of a Shiva Linga. So that's literally the phallus and the female coming together. So
Where?
again,
Where?
just this one. So the phallus
Oh.
and the female.
Okay.
And so it's coming together. And so again, two opposites have to come together to form the whole. Right? Now look at the Buddhist symbol there. You see the two hands have come together like this. So 5 fingers and 5 fingers coming together. And so when you see the text, the Buddhist text has 5 chapters dedicated to skills, 5 chapters dedicated to knowledge. And so when it comes together, it becomes the perfection of wisdom. Right? So behind you, you see a Vaishnav symbol there, a Vishnu symbol. And so the Vishnu has 4 attributes. So the conch shell is the ability to mobilize people. The lotus is the ability to negotiate. The scepter is the ability to give direction. And the weapon is the ability to destroy your enemy. So between the 2nd and the 7th century, Nepal was a republic. And so if the firstborn son of the king did not become the king, then who became the king? The person who had these 4 attributes. Right? Now, the question to all of us is, because of our education, we have been constantly taught to put things in boxes. Right? So the point about your time in Nepal is to help you to think outside the box. So what does it mean to think outside the box? So tell me, if Nepalese are Buddhist, are they Shaivik, are they Buddhist, or are they Vaishnava? So what do we learn? All of the above. So it'll be all of the above, right?
Yeah.
And so who found a way to put things in boxes? Some stupid, lazy person who thought the whole world can be put into boxes. But life is not like that, right? Life is not as simple as that, that you put things in boxes. So we say the people of Nepal are faithful. So what is faithful? Very simple. So there was a village going through a drought, and everybody suggested that we should have a prayer meeting for rain. So the story is everybody came to the prayer meeting, but only one child brought an umbrella. You see what it means to be faithful? So praying for rain is one thing, but bringing an umbrella is what you want to say. Faithful. And so the people here are faithful. Basically creating a learning environment. And so what I want you to do is, no matter how hard a piece of rock or stone is, so it takes about 1200 years for a stone line to basically get to that shape. Now, why would the Nepalese make stone lions despite the fact that Nepal has no lions. So how do you think even lions found their way into Nepal? From? China doesn't have lions.
Oh, they don't.
So where did the lions come from? So when Alexander invaded Asia, so remember he marched in with not just soldiers but also with artisans. And so the Nepalese learned how to make lions from the Greek masters. Right? And so why do you think they would make stone lions, versus wooden or others? Because they last, very good, they last. But then can you also imagine that as we talk about the words of the Buddha or about the Dharma, right? So can you imagine the teaching would be that those teachings would outlast the stone. So stone is hard, but the teachings will actually outlast that. Okay. So now this is how I want you to understand this. So a stone lion that is 1200 years begins to look like that. A piece of wood that is 400 years begins to look like this. Now look at this piece here. It's less than 15 years old. And then if you look at the iron and the cement, so we drove by saying it was here last week. So somebody must have added. So now what does it show about this monument is that the monument could be 1200 years old, it could be 400 years old, it could be 15 years old, and it could be new. Is it possible to date a monument in Kathmandu? No. Because some parts are 1200, some parts are new. So we say it is a living monument. Now why is it a living monument? Because every 100 years we have rebuilt it. And so we constantly rebuild it. Right? Now I want you to understand about conservation and how Nepalese think in terms of resilience is very simple. So look at this piece of wood. It's pretty badly worn out. Okay, so let's walk on the other side, come around. So look at these two columns. Now how are we able to recover it? Because Nepalese don't care about that old piece of wood. We care about somebody down the road who knows how to make a new one. So what are we conserving? Are we conserving a piece of art or are we conserving the artist? So do we conserve Lok's painting or do we conserve Lok? And this is fundamentally different from the way the West thinks. So taking this into pieces and putting in a glass box is not the way to do conservation. So David and Shelley Rubin invited me for lunch. Maybe they shouldn't have invited me for lunch because I told them there are two things I don't like. One is art in a glass box and the second is animals in a cage. The two things we don't do in Nepal. And so the whole point is that if you know the artist, then they can continue to make new pieces. So the last piece, 2015, the one before that, 1934, the one before that, 1833. Because we have the skills and the knowledge, right? So the guilds, like Lok, are the keepers of the knowledge. And so when you think of, the longevity of minerals or stone, doesn't matter. As long as you know it's the Greek that taught us, if the symbolism is that it is strong, it will last a long time, but it will still be less than what was taught. Right? So knowledge needs to be longer. But then knowing the artist who knows how to make a new piece is the fundamental of conservation. Right? And so that is why we are constantly able to recover Kathmandu, because not because we are able to save the piece, but because of the artist. Okay, so now having said that, come on. So now tell me, what would be wrong if I told you that this is an old house and this is a new house? So how does the mind take that? This is the old house, this is a new house. So in 1934, the earthquake happened. So people built with cement and steel, and they built many floors. Why? Because they wanted rent. After 2015, this guy built this way. He also wants more rent. What is the difference between the two houses? So one is using traditional materials, the other is using modern materials. Now, how did this happen? We are able to educate our mayors and our local leaders that on the ancient Silk Road, the people owned the houses, but the city owned the facade. And so today the city pays you the difference between cement and steel, and brick and wood. And so every house now is coming up with this style. Wow. So look at it. This is a new house, this is an old house. So don't confuse yourself. Now why is this guy going to get more rent? What is going to enable this other guy to get more rent than this guy? Well, something called Airbnb.
Oh my God.
Because you can put 6 rooms on Airbnb without the marketing budget of a Radisson or a Marriott. So can you imagine how many rooms are on Airbnb in Patan? Over 2,000.
Wow.
So look at this phenomenon. So if you think outside the box, right, a lot of things that are destroyed, a lot of things that are gone, it can be brought back quite easily. And in the process, you are providing incentive to the local artisans who know how to continue to deliver. And so next time we will have an earthquake. But then I'll know somebody down the road who knows how to be beautiful. So this is one of those things that we really have to be careful, because the world wants to help you, but they might help you in the wrong way that actually destroys then the basis, for your ability to recover. Just something. How you need to understand the geology in the sort of the ancient city perspective. So look at this water tank, right? So the water tank is very important, and I'll show you many systems. So one of them is we use last year's rainwater to store it. And so now remember, geology, as in the name of the pond is called Jog Moru Puku in Newari, which means that the pond doesn't have any foundation. Why do you build a pond without any foundation? So that the water seeps into the ground and it keeps the water table in the whole city high. So using seepage as one of the techniques for storing water, right? So now we bring the people together and we say, look, the pond is very important because A, it is a firefighting for the ancient city, this is how you fought fires. Secondly, it keeps the water table high. But thirdly, if it doesn't rain on time next year, then you have enough water to drain so that you can irrigate the land. So people say yes, 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 but then they say, we'd like to take care of the monument first. Why monument first? Because monument is a faith-based, and so people would like to take care of it. So when we started, you can see the prayer wheels. So each of those prayer wheels is a receipt for 3,000 rupees that the local people raised so that we can take care of the stupa. Now, why is this stupa so important? It was built 2,300 years ago. So 2,300 years ago, the Mauryan emperor Ashok was basically creating an empire based on his sword. And he married a very devout Buddhist girl who would not allow him to touch his own children until he renounced violence. So this great king gave up the sword, called the third Buddhist council meeting in Patliputra in Patan, and in this he made a decision that the 8 stupas built when the Buddha passed away should be dug up and the relics divided into 84,000 portions, and his family, his army, everybody had to go to the ends of the empire to teach the dharma. So Patan got 5 of them. So you can be in Sri Lanka, you can be in, and you'll be shown in Ashok Stupa, one of 84,000 built, but Patan got 5. So people want to preserve it, right? So then you say, what is the 4 stupas around the main stupa? So remember the 4 places in the Buddha's life. So the birthplace is Lumbini in Nepal, Bodh Gaya where he meditated, right, is in India. The place where he gave his first sermon would be in Sarnath in India, and Kushinagar where he passed away. So how practical and lazy are Nepalese who built 4 stupas so that going around it would be equivalent to going to all those 4 sites, symbolically. Right? So now this place now gets preserved. Then we start preserving the pond. Now the process of development that you want to understand is, look at all these windows, all the private property. So when you conserve an area, you create value. What are all these people doing by having these nice windows? They are capturing the value by selling the rooms. What does the city do? The city taxes them and uses the money to make sure everybody is going to school. Everybody has access to medical services. So everybody participates, right? So in that process, the $30 million that we spent, doing Patan or this part, now the World Bank wants to do $300 million worth of it. So what are we replicating? Are we replicating Patan? No. We are replicating the principles that worked. And the principles were to create value, to capture the value, and to redistribute the value. That principle is what we want to replicate. Right? And so with tigers we have done it, with rhinos we have done it with the birthplace of the Buddha, so we've done it. Does it have to be a pond? No. Value can be a tiger, value can be a rhino. But how do you replicate the principles is what you really want to learn in your time in Nepal. Not anecdote. But if you can find the principle behind the anecdote, then you are on to scaling and replicability. Okay, so for example, why do we have motor boats on the pond? Paddle boats. Why paddle boats on the pond? Because this is still water, so it's not flowing water. So a lot of nutrients get in. And the solution to that is basically, so it's called eutrophication, right? When the nutrients get high in the water because of evaporation. So what you want to do is use child labor creatively, so that when children come from school, they play. And when they play, they aerate the water. Use child labor wisely.
Wait, because they're moving the water?
Yeah, they play.
Yeah.
And so as they turn the water, it gets oxygenated.
Right.
Free of cost.
Yeah.
So take a walk. Now look at this. Just when you step out, so 23-year-old, 100-year-old city, but look at that. We made it friendly for the blind.
Oh, that's
So you keep on improving geology.
Mustang.
Geology.
Yeah. Uno Brian mo siya Brian wo UK University.
Uno ama.
Ibi na Mustang ito.
Jiu na imbudi mo.
Uno mo din.
Jisko ba yan? Jisko mo.
Ibi mo. Ibi ka.
Yeah, come a little closer.
Ibi ka.
Okay, so here's troublemaker. So that's how you introduce. And so in every neighborhood, there are people who are very serious, people who can mobilize people. And so remember what I mentioned about Vishnu. So the ability to give direction, the ability to destroy your enemy, the ability to negotiate. And so there are always people like that in the neighborhood who do make this happen. And so Sailendra can actually help make this happen. So just a little story and then
Thank you
take
very
too
much.
much time.
First of all, I'd like to welcome you in my community, or let's say our community.
Yes.
I'm very much proud that I'm very much glad that you gave me the name troublemaker. It's not like that. We only try to do what we can do to the community. There should be somebody who takes an initiation, right? We doesn't need a lot of money. Only the initiation and the mindset that we can think, then it all happens like that. Fortunately, at a time in 2014, the project of the World Bank came on. That the project of the World Bank, that was a PURP, Proper Urban Economic Regeneration Project, right? And in that project, what was there was the theme was conserving the tangible heritage and intangible heritage. The economy of that area should change. That was the pilot project. And as the project, the local ministry didn't want to do that because they are not getting anything under the table. And we came to know about the project, and we went to the local municipal, and we had to force a lot, taking all
And
the
still he
community
says he's
people.
not a troublemaker.
Yeah, taking all the community youths, not the seniors at a time, the youths. We gather all the youths in the community that we all convince that if the project goes back, we won't getting anything like this nowadays. The municipal budget they allocate the budget for the community is only about 8 or 10 lakhs. That is about $10,000 a year. But that was a project of something like 15 million.
About 30 million total.
Total project was 30 million, and in that location, in that area, there was almost like 2 million project. They just wanted to let it go without anything. But we
Or even better, if they could build a mall
yeah.
or a supermarket. they would have.
Otherwise, once in the story, means like once it was all full of green garbage, green grasses. You want to time to for the story only.
Dula. Yeah.
This is
So this is just good because what you want to do in your learning is always find the right people in the community to talk to, right? And so sometimes you can talk to a lot of people who may not know the real actual story, but being able to identify somebody like Sailendra to tell you the story in every location is what you really want.
It is.
Come, you can come down.
Yeah. This is the
So
picture
they are
set.
engineering students, right?
Yeah.
From the Institute
They're
of
from
Engineering.
IOE, Engineering Institute of Engineering. Yeah, Institute of Engineering. So this is the picture. Luckily, we had when all this is happening, we try to gather the pictures as much as we can from the community people collected. So these are some collection I made. So this is a picture taken before the 1934 earthquake, and you should be aware that there was a massive earthquake in 1934 also. There was also the massive earthquake in 1934 also, right? And in the Karamu, we do have earthquake in between, big earthquake in between 80 or 90 years. And that was the recorded earthquake we know. This was a picture taken before that earthquake, see. Now in this picture you can see all the houses are the same elevation, same height, and tiled roofs, right? Thank you. This is also the picture taken before that earthquake, and before the 1934. In this picture, you can mark, I used to take only one point, not the wall. In this center of the pond, there was a sitting patio like this one, the rectangular type, with a three-sided brick and clay mortared wall and a tile roof, right? And in 1934, it fell down. That fell down. There was a lot of story in many of the communities, but I used to take only one point so that it will be easier for you to understand, right? So after the earthquake, when it fell down, people of those time made the square type with the white painted and corrugated sheets. Somewhere around after the 1934 earthquake, right? So this means maybe the Rana region's prime minister, they have started visiting the Europe at a time. We don't have our local architecture, we don't paint white on those days. So it is the influence that it shows that British architecture, the European architecture started influencing the Kashmir Valley. So many of the houses are painted at a time. You might see the white paints and Anandoka and many other squares, they are painted white. So this is also the piece taken somewhere around 55 or 60 years back. All the houses are the same, not destroyed. So one time, somewhere around 30 years ago, not 30, about 40 years ago, this full pond was full filled with all garbage, green, grass. And on those days, some of the houses in the community, they started joining the toilet sewer pipe direct to the pond. Now you can imagine what a good fertilizer they got. So the grass is taller than the human size.
So the whole is eutrophication.
Right. The grass is taller than human size. On those days, small kids used to play over the grass. They don't get wet, though the water is below. They don't get wet. The roots were entangled in such a way that they can play over the grass. And at this time, the local municipal came with a proposal of packing of the pond and make the marketplace over it. That was the attitude, that was the mentality, that was the level of thinking of the political elected leaders. I used to say nowadays. So at this time, then we the community youth gathered again. So we don't know the market, but we need the pond back again. But they didn't have money for that. So what did they do? At a time there was one small organization called UDLE. With the seed money of that seed money, we take out all the grass again and give the pond back to life again. Right? So we took all the grasses out and the rest are the same. And luckily, unfortunately, we found this picture. This picture was painted by John Henry Oldfield. By profession, he was a medical doctor on those days. And by hobby, he was an artist. So it was a picture painted in 1852. So when we get this 100% documented picture, all the community decided again, why going to that square white building or the rectangular building when we already got the 1852 document? So we gathered again. We pulled down this white building and made the same as it was in 1852. Not the same, but almost the same, right? The same, but still, we could find the nature. As in 2015, the earthquake happened again. It didn't take even 3 seconds to get the sitting patio fell down. Right? Even on that day, all the people were fishing in the boat. We have a big net, and we're fishing on that day. And the water was something like a tsunami at that time. Yeah. All got out, right? And again, we waited for the government to come up to build all those monuments. On that earthquake, the sitting patio fell down, and the third story of that temple fell down. Not fell down, but it was broken, it tilted. So what he decided, stitch in time saves 9, right? So, but still, we waited for 22 months to come for the government to rebuild all those things. But they didn't come. Maybe, we don't have to blame them. Maybe they do have a lot of things and priorities on those days. So we waited. When they didn't come, we again gathered in the same place. We all community gathered and brought the engineers from architects from the IOE Engineering Institute of Engineering. We made the documentation. We kept 4 months for documents only for that temple. And probably that temple is the first one to get documented in the whole Kashmir Valley. And we are very proud of that, right? And after that, the whole community gathered again, collected a money fund. But At the time, local government didn't say that they didn't have money, but we didn't give up. We raised the fund, we made it. Then only with the shame later on they came up with a small fund they could give. With the shame, right? So again, this is the latest version line. Let's say this can be iPhone 12 or 13 or 14, right? And this is probably iPhone 15. And when you come to the evening, then we meet all the lights on every flower pots, and this is the latest version. This is the iPhone 16 Pro nowadays. So this is the story that how we got it.
Good business.
Yeah. And after as the theme of the project, the PRP, the 10 years. Unfortunately, 2019 Himalayan television, one of the national television, Himalayan television, and this Doosan is a good excavator company. They made infrastructure excellence award because many of the things are falling down in the earthquake in 2015. And for the first of its time, and the first of its kind infrastructure excellence award was been made, done in 2019, and at a time without any nomination called, only on the research base, they gave the project award for this project. Like it is said that best contractor for a small project, Mr. Soil and the Sister Project Pimbal Pokri Pond. It was done given on their own research without calling the nomination. This was the small project, and at a time we were nominated in other hearing also, like reconstruction award. We were nominated in that award, so, but we didn't got the award. But still, it is a very privilege that we think that we already got the award because we were selected among the best three. Right?
Piece of granite.
And yeah, it's a ACC block, and this is a World Bank certificate. This service is also of first of its kind, given by the World Bank in the whole world. I think I am the one to get it. There are two services made by the World Bank after the success story. This is the certificate of appreciation given by the World Bank. Right? And that's why I used to tell to the many people that if you do anything to the community, you might get blame or you might not get appreciation that you have done. But the third eye in the upstairs, third eye, somebody with the third eye is always watching you and your deeds. That's why we always can do anything. Good karma.
So we say, hungry people are also angry people. So as the time goes, you start getting angry. So just wanted to, believe me, we're getting close to lunch. So the point here is that, it's like stone, right? So you're writing in stone, or in a stone, it lasts for a long time. But what we've learned again and again in Kathmandu and its conservation is that the intangible matters more than the tangible. So when an earthquake happens, everybody is worried about recovering the tangible. But we somehow are able to force that if the community is not strong, if we cannot organize the people, then things won't happen. So one of the things that you learn is, for example, you can see this is made of stone, but the interpretation of that stone is very, very living. So I want you to understand what living culture is. So if you come a little closer, so it's very easy to recognize the statue of the Buddha because the Buddha's ears will be long and it will be empty, right? So the Buddha is very easy to recognize. Now look down here, just like in the painting, long ears with an exaggerated earring. So people get confused. So basically what you're saying is that if you look at this line here, in 78 AD, right, the Buddhist council that met in Kashmir said if you have the teachings of the Buddha to become a Buddha yourself, that is selfish. But if you use the teachings to go back to bring everybody along, then that is Mahayana, or the higher vehicle. So you can see how the two schools split between Theravada, which is to emulate the life of the Buddha, and to go for Mahayana, which is to use the teachings to end suffering in the world. So now look around, you don't see any saffron robes, you don't see any shaved heads, and yet everybody is a Buddhist here because they practice Mahayana Buddhism. Right? So the intangible heritage tells you exactly what the society is. Now look at this strut, this wooden strut behind you. So the Kathmandu Valley was a lake. The lake was the home of the snakes. And so the people of Kathmandu believe that if the snakes leave the valley, we will not have any rain. So for the whole month, we have been dragging a chariot through the town to symbolize bringing back the snakes into the valley. And so every 12 years, a new strut has to be placed. And so if you go around Patan, counting these wooden struts, and you multiply by 12, then you'll know that the festival started in the 6th century. So that's how we keep census of the festival. Now look at that open platform on top. Just behind you, the open platform. So why is that open platform along with all this space preserved? Because the 8 mother goddesses come to life in September on that day. So because we have to have a performance of the 8 mother goddesses, so this whole space is preserved. Right? So in an earthquake, we don't focus on the tangible first. We focus on nature first. Then we focus on the intangible. And then only we start building the tangible. And so it's a very strange sequence to follow because donors would like to focus on the built first. But we'd like to focus on nature first, and then the intangible, and then the built. And so that's the sequence that we follow. So in that intangible, so just above the red banner, if you look at the wooden panel, so that's the entire biodata of the Buddha in wood, right? So the first one is basically conception, and so it's basically iconographed by the mother of the Buddha dreaming of a white elephant. So that will be conception day. And then if you go a little further, just look at the wooden panel. Showing his deathbed, and so at the age of 80, the Buddha is passing away. Now the conversation that happens between the Buddha and his followers is a very profound one because he's saying, so the disciples want to know who will be our teacher after you die. And the Buddha replied by saying, you will no longer have a teacher, you will only have my teachings. And so out of that, the whole city that we will see later on is basically built on that, answering that question, that you will no longer have a teacher, but you will only have my teachings. And so it's how we preserve the teachings that really matter. Right? So this is what Dipesh is showing, is that when you do these buildings, look at the wall there, right? So remember the Kathmandu Valley clay, it was the bottom of the lake, and the clay is very strong. But the reason why those walls look smooth is because the Kathmandu Valley bricks are all tapered. And so there is mortar, but you don't see it in the front. And so that's what gives the buildings a smooth surface. Right? But because the bricks are all tapered. So using clay is because of the abundance of the bottom of the lake. But the tapered is something. Now look at the color there. So before the bricks are baked, it is dipped in oil. And so it gives you this permanent color, for life. So this is so simple.
Like waterproof.
And waterproof. The street, right? And the street that we've been walking on. So believe me, the ancient city builders knew that every city has nice and not so nice. Right? Nice and not so nice. So for example, garbage has to be cleaned up. Not so nice. You have to take dead bodies for cremation. Not nice. So these are what we call service lanes. To do the not so nice things in the city. Right? So whether you're bringing construction material, whether you're digging a drain, or so what we need to understand is historically cities were built with two functions: the nice part and the not so nice part. Okay, so far we've been working on the not so nice part. So shall we see the nice part? Yeah. The blue on the river. The red is First grass. Cannabis. Can you smell it? That the spaces have a hierarchy. And so, for example, this space, if you are an office colleague, you might get invited only this far for a wedding or for a feast. The next courtyard that we're going to is more special, and the third courtyard would be the main monastic area. Right? So just try to appreciate, how the hierarchy of spaces work in urban planning as well. Right? Now, just look at that little painting there. So in the West, when the children ask their mothers, "Where did I come from?" I think they say you came by a stork, or a stork brought you. So look at that painting. So it's depicting the birth of the Buddha. Where is the Buddha being born out of? No, look at the carefully. Look at the mother.
Armpit.
So in Nepal, if somebody says, "Where did I come from?" what do the mothers tell them? You're born from my armpit.
Serious?
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
But the principle is don't believe artists. So who will be our teacher after you die is that you will not have a teacher, but you will only have my teachings. So this institution that you see is created to basically house the teachings of the Buddha. So the first thing you're being asked is, in the Kathmandu Valley, how many of these would you like to see? Of these courtyards?
How many do I want to see?
About 500 of them. So the Kathmandu Valley has 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites and 2,200 monuments like this. It's a huge concentration. So this institution is known as the Baha. And the Baha has 4 functions. So the first is the community is organized around the concept of faith in the teachings of the Buddha. Okay? The second is that they are organized as a committee or as a community, which is known as the Sangha. So Buddha, Sangha, and then the rules that they follow on a day-to-day basis is the Dharma. So Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, becomes the 3 jewels of Buddhism. Now the fourth thing that you need to understand is there is land as trust. And so for the artisans who keep on maintaining this for hundreds of years, everybody is paid in grain. So the grain that grows on the land that belongs to this trust, every year you get a percentage of that grain. And so the reason why people have been taking care of it, because you get paid in grain. Now, the whole idea of the grain economy is unlike a cash economy. Cash is more difficult to give, but grain, if you don't give it, then it rots. So why is there so many feasts? Why is there so many festivals? Why is there so much alcohol in Kathmandu Valley? Because everybody has more rice than they can eat. And so the surplus rice, either you ferment it, either you distill it, or you have a feast where you invite everybody and serve it. So that wealth or that surplus is then reflected in the way we do our monuments, right? So in this, in this particular bahal, so you look at the family, you see the child, and you see the adult, the whole family taking care of it. So if you take care of this monument for 1 month, do you know when his next turn will come? When do you think his next turn will come? So 1 month at a time. So his next turn will come after 58 years. That's how big the organization is.
Oh wow, I get it now. I see what you said. Yeah.
So the young child represents Thervad because he's celibate. The father represents Mahayana, and then the priest represents Vajrayana. So the 3 schools in Buddhism. And so whenever you perform the rituals, all 3 have to be performed to represent the 3 schools of Buddhism. But this family will not get a turn for the next 58 years. So that's how strong Kathmandu Valley culture and organization is. So this whole notion of a failed state, I think Nepalese don't even know what that means. Because this is so far away from the government. This is so embedded in the way people are. That these things have been continuing for thousands of years, for 2,600 years. Whereas prime ministers and ministers can change. So very embedded. You can just walk around, but if you want to see the rituals, then you have to come early in the morning. So by 9:30 people go to office in Kathmandu. So by the time everybody's left. But if you come at 5 or 6 in the morning, up to about 9:30, then you see all the rituals.
This one's younger. There was one here